Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Integrative Wellness, the Natural House Call segment. I'm Dr. Z, Dr. Eugene Zamperion, naturopathic physician, herbalist, and your host today, along with Maud. We bring you this very enlightening radio every other Sunday where we talk about issues in health, wellness, and alternative medicine today. Again, thanks for joining us and giving up part of your Sunday. I hope it's worthwhile to you. I know it's going to be worthwhile as we have a special guest in the studio today. We have Dr. Gary Gruber, who's was a former professor of environmental medicine at UB College of Naturopathic Medicine. He's a licensed naturopathic physician and practitioner, and his private practice is in New Canaan, and he has certified himself in a lot of different therapies, like heart math is one of the things we'll be talking about today. But he has a background as a CPA and tax manager, so if you have any tax questions, you can ask that. He predicted the stock market crash. I remember sitting on the beach in Jamaica with him years ago and talking about that the market was going to go down and all the reasons why, and he was spot on. So anyway, now he changed gears, and now he's a naturopathic physician, and he currently serves on the board of directors of the Connecticut Naturopathic Physicians Association, or I think you were, right?
Right.
Yeah. And he provides healthy, natural, and holistic solutions to counteract the diseases and illness facing our society. His practice serves patients challenged by a wide range of issues and acute illnesses to chronic ailments. And he is working now with something called heart strength therapy, which is this real passion of his, connecting the mind and the body and the spirit to actually achieve really good results and permanent wellness in his patients, getting rid of the true obstacles to cure. So without further ado, we're going to bring on Dr. Gruber. Gary, can I call you Gary?
Of course. Good morning.
Good. How's this sound, Maud? Good? Sounds good?
Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
great. Well, welcome again to the program, and we wanted to talk a little bit about what got you interested in this mind-body practice and how important it is to really help patients get better and see their true obstacles.
Sure. I think it goes all the way back to when I came out of medical school.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about naturopathic medicine being a holistic type of medicine where we treat body, mind, and spirit. So in the true sense of that, I wanted to have a holistic practice. So I searched for different things that would enhance a holistic practice. We get so much information, so much therapy about the physical body when we're in medical school,
Right.
but not too much about the emotional piece or the spiritual piece. So I looked further, and I at the time I remember I was very interested in homeopathy, and there's a great physicist, William Tiller, who you may remember. He was in a film called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I was interested in his books because of that movie, so I started reading the book, and one of his books, and he had a great experiment that was being reproduced all over the world about homeopathy. And in that experiment, he had a group of four people who were very adept at a certain type of meditation called heart math, and they used these people to actually program an electronic device. Now that just, that blows your mind, and it's very interesting. But what I really keyed in on was not so much the experiment in the actual homeopathy and showing how homeopathy worked, but it was this heart math thing. I was very intrigued how people could meditate on something and cause a physical device to change. So I went down the path of studying all about heart math and became a certified practitioner, because it is truly a scientific system. It's really based on science. It's based on the science of heart rate variability and how the heart rate variability affects the nervous system, the hormones, and so on and so forth. So it fits very well with a scientific approach to natural medicine. Okay. The next piece was, how do I fit the spiritual component into all of this? And that story comes from the idea that how does muscle testing or kinesiology work? Remember, we used to have like little mini seminars at medical school where they would bring in people to show us different techniques. And muscle testing was really never taught in school, but it was a very intriguing kind of phenomenon that when you see it for the first time, it just kind of blows your mind that this could how could this possibly happen, that something that is negative for the body, like pesticide, can actually make your muscle go weak, or something that's very positive for the body makes your body go strong. How could that, what is that phenomenon all about? So I started researching that, and I found a lot of information was written by a psychiatrist named David Hawkins. He wrote the very famous book Power versus Force, and in that book he talks a little bit about the about kinesiology, the muscle effect, and once I got hooked on his work, it just never stopped. I'm completely just involved, both personally and professionally, in the work that he does and that he's put out there. And it's helped me kind of bring all of this spiritual, emotional, and physical stuff all together in one place.
Now, you told me that one of the reasons for doing a lot of this was also you were able to go back to many of your charts and through your charts and previous patients and notice that the patients that seemed to get really well and stay well were those that worked on this deeper level. Tell us about that revelation.
So one of the things that we do in medicine is we go through something called review of systems, where we check in on different symptoms based on each system in the body. So, for example, headaches in the head, where are they? How frequently?
Do they move? What part of the head? All those things.
Exactly. Or cardiovascular, you might ask about, do you have high blood pressure, or do you have cold extremities? So, we go through all these questions, and interspersed through all of these questions were things about, how does this make you feel? Okay. Do you feel fatigued? Do you feel angry? Do you feel depressed? And because they were dispersed throughout the review of systems, I didn't really notice that until I wanted to. So I went back into all my charts and I took out all of these emotional responses to these symptoms that people were having, and I put it into like a little list, a little format, and I noticed, wow, a lot of my patients were experiencing some very significant emotional issues. I was always focused on the physical, but not so much the emotional. And then I said, okay, well, what if I go back to the people that we worked a lot with, the heart math, the emotional management piece? What did that look like? And sure enough, those folks really got better fast, and the physical component of their condition was much easier to resolve, okay, because we worked on the emotional piece first. And so that really was very intriguing. And why? The question is, why is that so? Why is that so?
Yeah, like what do emotions do to us, both physiologically, and how are they related to many diseases?
Yeah, it seems that what happens is that we get into a cycle where we become addicted to certain chemicals that our body makes as a result of certain emotions. And it becomes very difficult to break those chemicals. So we talk about with many of the negative emotions, whether it's depression or apathy or anxiety or fear or anger, these emotions, they manifest what are called fight or flight chemicals, and that being adrenaline and cortisol. And these chemicals that our body makes as a result of a stress can be very, very addictive.
Wow.
And so that's where the cycle comes in. And what we do know about these chemicals is that, for example, they suppress your immune system. They change your blood sugar levels.
Yeah, yeah.
They interfere with the sleep-wake cycle, so people can have insomnia or difficulty falling asleep. And so once all of these, and high blood pressure is another one because of the adrenaline. So when these chemicals are constantly, chronically running because the person has negative emotions running in the background, and it might be truly they're conscious of those emotions, but most of the time they're not even conscious of it. And so what we're trying to do is bring awareness to what's going on emotionally in this thought process, both consciously and unconsciously, and then we can begin to break the cycle of these chemicals that are in most cases very addictive, but also are something called catabolic. You see, those chemicals are designed to protect us so we can survive in a very hostile environment, okay? And most people don't live in a very hostile environment, but their body is reacting as though, as I always say with my patients, as though the bear is chasing you through the woods, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, you have to understand that our body is built for survival in a very hostile environment, okay? So many times what I do with patients is I say, I want you to imagine you're living 5,000 years ago, okay? No hospitals, no phones, no electricity, and it's at the end of the day, and you have just fed the clan, okay? So you decide that you're going to take a walk on a very nice path where it's very gentle and calming along a lovely lake, okay? You pass your favorite blueberry bush and you're walking along, and all of a sudden you hear the sound behind you rustling in the blueberry bush, and it jumps out, and it's a black bear running right towards you.
Jeez.
Okay? Now, how do you react?
So you have fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah. Those are your answers.
The three.
Yeah, those are your answers.
Yeah.
Okay? And as a matter of fact, the way the heart variability works is that the heart rate variability goes into this incoherent kind of messaging to the whole body. And it changes the way your brain functions, because as the signal comes up from the heart, there's a bifurcation or a little fork in the road, okay? You're not aware that this is happening, but it happens on its own. And when the signal from your heart is incoherent, very erratic, the signal moves away from your frontal cortex, the part of your brain that does all the thinking, and it goes to the emotional center, the amygdala. Okay? That is why you have those choices: fight, flight, or freeze. Now, if you're going to run away, you can understand that you can't think. Your brain is not wired to think when you're in fight or flight because of this heart rate variability that's incoherent. It's designed that way. You don't want to stop and say, well, let's see, if the bear is chasing me at 5 miles per hour and I run at 3 miles per hour, then it will catch me in about 50 feet. You can't even do any of those simple arithmetics. You're running. And all of the things that happen in your body to protect you in survival mode, they happen, right?
Yeah, that's why, you see miraculous grandmas lifting cars off of babies, strength that you didn't know you had.
Because all of the energy is funneled into your circulation so that your muscles are strong. You get a lot more oxygen, okay? A lot more nutrients. So you're capable of doing these kind of things. Survival, that's what it's all about. Now,
your eyes dilate, I guess, right?
Sure. And don't forget, digestion shuts down.
That's it.
Okay?
It's done.
Yeah.
So if you're living like that all the time, then how can you digest your food?
Well,
it's
you
tough.
can't. You can't. You see, well, first of all, what we do know from the folks from the research at HeartMath research, is that the fight or flight response, it takes about 60 to 90 minutes to reverse itself. So remember, the example is you're walking on the path that's very calm. So after this little incident with the bear, because the bear decides that it's going to go to the next blueberry bush, okay, and leaves you alone, it takes 60 to 90 minutes for the for this whole fight or flight mechanism to reverse. Okay? So your point is very valid. Well, what happens if you're in chronic fight or flight? It never reverses. It never reverses. So you can have all kinds of problems: high blood pressure, digestive problems, insomnia, problems with fighting infection, because one of the mechanisms of the fight or flight, the elevated cortisol, suppresses your immune system. Okay. It's really the whole idea is to bring health and wellness to the body by cutting the cycle of that fight or flight mechanism.
I have a question about thoughts and emotions. Like you were saying, in the fight or flight, you're not really thinking, but isn't it thoughts that generate the emotions, like your own, what they call self-talk, or negative self-talk, or
well, truly in the real fight or flight, with the bear example, okay, that is an innate. That's innate.
Yeah,
that's innate. Okay. But what's happening when you have negative self-talk is you're constantly going into the amygdala, the center for fight or flight, for survival. Okay, so you're constantly bringing yourself into patterns that keep you. So remember, the brain is made up of all of these nerve cells, billions of nerve cells, and they form patterns based upon memory. Okay, so how do we go back to that memory is through emotions. So when you have a thought that's negative, it's going to pull up that memory, and then your brain is going to cause your body to react with all of these different chemicals. So sometimes what's said is that emotions create chemicals, okay, and that keeps you in that chronic fight or flight.
I see.
Yeah. So the idea is ultimately to replace those patterns of neurological tissue that we call memory, okay, with new memories, with new learning, with, patterns that are of a wise adult, not a pattern that's of a child that is in fear or worry. That's usually where those patterns come from childhood.
And these patterns can create types of thoughts, and can create panic in patients, because you're doing the fight or flight thing.
Right.
And so you've developed, taking wisdom from different systems, some type of a therapy for mind-body medicine, which you call emotional management and transcendence, and heart strength therapy.
Heart strength therapy.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
Sure. So the reason I called it heart strength therapy is because I took all of this great foundational work in heart math, and then I added something called character strengths. Now, character strengths are something that are pretty new, say within the past 20 years, and it came out of an area of psychology called positive psychology. And what they found, and what I like about the character strengths, is they're very well researched. It's an open format, so that if you want to use this system and do research with it, it's available to the public, the scientists, to do that. Whereas other kind of business management tools, the Briggs Stratton kind of things, those are closed, so you you got to depend upon their research. So I liked what the VIA Character Institute is doing with their research. Anyway, what they found was they looked at 6 different virtues, and they then subdivided those virtues into character strengths. And you can think of character strengths like someone's personality, because that's really what it is, okay? And the really cool part is that when we take the character survey, to what it tells us is what our real true identity and strengths are, okay? And what's going to blow your mind about 24 character strengths is that it represents 6 sextillion combinations. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that number look like? 6.0 times 10 to the 23rd.
Wow.
Okay. That's many more possibilities than people on this planet. That's why what's very cool about what they've discovered is that every person is unique. So by combining the heart math with the uniqueness of someone's personality survey, their character strengths, I can help them personalize their understanding of how to break this cycle of stress.
So let's just quickly go back to the heart math piece of it. Heart math is trying to bring the EKG waves of your heart in synchrony with your EEG waves of your brain, right? Sort of like
Right.
matching the...
That's right. And we call that coherence.
Coherence.
Okay? And you can think of coherence as, well, first of all, the heart rate variability is well known. I mean, your heart is supposed to speed up and slow down. Okay? We know that. And it does that because of to adapt to the environment. So it's constantly working to change speeds.
Yeah, I mean, I even know foods that change speeds. Like I had a patient, and this was developed by some of the old-time naturopaths, like even Dr. Carroll, the founder of constitutional hydrotherapy. He could notice changes in by auscultating, listening to people's heart sensitivities to food without blood work.
Right. It speeds up and slows down
Yeah.
based on whether the system is accepting it or not.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. So the heart rate variability is supposed to be a nice, smooth transition. So for someone, say, in their 40s, the heart rate would start, let's just say, at about 60, and then it would gently increase to about 85, so 25 beats per minute spread, and then gently come down to 60 again. So you'd see this nice increase in speed and then decrease in speed, very much like if you're going to pass a car on the highway. So you see the car in front of you, you put on your turn signal, pull into the left lane, and you accelerate past the car, and then you deaccelerate as you pull into the right-hand lane. So it's a nice, smooth kind of transition. Imagine if you were a driver where you pulled up right behind the car, slammed on the brakes, jerked the car over to the left side, immediately accelerated. Once you were thousands of feet past the car, you slammed on the brakes, pulled it over into the right-hand lane. It's so choppy. There's no smooth transition. Well, that's the difference between a coherent heart rate variability, nice and smooth, versus incoherent.
I see.
Yeah, so when a person is feeling anxiety, the heart rate variability is very, very choppy. Okay, there's no smooth wave that you can pick up from that, and that incoherence, where there's a choppy wave, that's the signal to the brain. Fight or flight. That's how that works.
I see.
Yeah, it's a simple signal, and something very something else that's very interesting about heart rate variability is that every cell in your body picks up the signal. It's not just your brain, because what they've measured is the strength of the electromagnetic field of the heart, and it literally goes to the very tips of your fingers. Yeah, think about when you do an EKG.
Some of the leads are
on your
arms.
wrist.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
So I always ask my patients the question: when you do the EKG, are they connecting it to a wire that's in your wrist? No, they're not. They're the leads. These electrodes are picking up the electromagnetic field of the heart, and that field is pretty much bathing the entire body. So every cell is getting that signal, whether it's coherent or incoherent. You see? So that's why the body can really be very kerfuffled when you have an incoherent heart rate variability. Okay?
So then, well, you know what? I'm looking at the time. We have to take a quick break and do an ID. So again, you're listening to WPKN Bridgeport 89.5 FM, listener-supported free speech community radio, serving Connecticut, Suffolk County, Litchfield, Fairfield, New Haven counties, and you can listen to us even on the podcast at wpkn.org. I'm Dr. Z, and we're here with Dr. Gary Gruber talking about heart strength therapy, Maud's Man in the Boards, and we're going to take a musical break, and we'll see you after the top of the hour. Grab a cup of tea, and we'll see you in a bit. Stay with us. And we're back with more of I'm having trouble with my headphones. The Natural House Call. I'm Dr. Z, and thanks for joining us, 9:03. And we're here with Dr. Gary Gruber talking about heart strength therapy. That's what we're going to get into now. So tell us a little bit about heart strength therapy and the 3 steps: awareness, resilience, and reprogramming.
Right. So what we do is we introduce a patient to their heart rate variability, okay, in our first session. And while we were just chatting and learning about why they've come to the office and what's going on in their life, what kind of conditions they're dealing with, I'm paying attention to how they're breathing, okay? Are they taking a full breath or a shallow breath? Are they holding their breath? And this was something that I felt was really very important to study with patients, because if they're holding their breath or they're breathing very shallow, then they're creating stress. And that stress affects their heart rate variability, okay? So what I say to them is, okay, I've noticed that you're not breathing very deeply. You're very shallow. Or I noticed as we were talking, you would hold your breath, and then all of a sudden you'd go,
Like sigh, kind of, or do that.
right,
Yeah.
a big sigh or just a big breath. So that's a really simple way. Holding your breath is a very, very simple way to create anxiety. Simple.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just try it. Not right now. Not right now. But truthfully, if you hold your breath, it's a way to create anxiety. Okay?
Makes sense, because all the ancient masters of yoga and other things all talked about the deep pranayamic breath, and how the mind follows the breath, right?
Breath,
Yeah,
of course,
yeah.
of course. And so the next step is to show the patient, and we have a really nice little tool in the HeartMath system, where they literally just follow a ball and inhale and exhale, and inhale, and they do this for 1 minute. And what remarkably is shown to the patient is that just by breathing for 1 minute, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, it changes your heart rate variability and it becomes coherent. It becomes coherent. So the most important part that a patient needs to learn in that first session, are you breathing? It's an awareness of your breath. That's all we ask.
Wow.
And we ask them to pay attention to that for 2 weeks. Okay? Now, what typically happens is not only are they aware of their breath, but they start to become aware of how things are impacting them emotionally, how they react to just everyday events like traffic, or their spouse saying something, or how do they react when they're at work and they see the caller ID from their boss.
So does it go both ways, where the emotions and events affect the breathing, and then the breathing affects
that's a very interesting question.
Okay.
Because many times people have created a pattern of holding their breath based on some negative experience that's happened in the past, and they're not aware of that. Okay, so what we're doing is we're bringing their attention and their awareness to that. Okay, this is the very, very first step, and really, really important, is awareness. And there's a lot of work out there in the mind-body field with respect to mindfulness, and it's pretty much the same thing, except that I've integrated the heart rate variability so that the patient can actually see the effect of either holding their breath or breathing normally. Okay, and normal breathing is basically 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, and you can do that even when you're talking. But more importantly, you should be doing it when you're listening, when you're not talking, okay? Because that's usually most of the person's day is just thinking, just being, okay? So you want to be doing the breathing. And so that begins to bring awareness into the person's experience about not just breath, but also there are negative emotions, okay? The next step is to build resilience. So remember we talked a little bit about the bear chasing you through the woods, and it takes 60 to 90 minutes to recover from that, okay? So let's talk about some real world examples that HeartMath has measured, okay? And they work with first responders, so people who are
Ambulance,
firemen,
policemen.
yeah, right. Okay, so these people are responding to an incident, and they basically have to react based on fight or flight because they're trained to do that. Okay, when they're going into an active shooting situation, the police, they're not really critically thinking. They're reacting based on their training. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a muscle memory.
It is
just a deep.
And so these people train,
Yeah.
and they train so that when they go into these situations, they just react the way they're supposed to react.
Right,
okay,
right.
but they still go into fight or flight. And
Sure,
so,
yeah.
they have to. And so in order to help these people recover, what they found was if we do a certain tool called the quick coherence tool throughout the day, that we not only build, not only do we recover quickly from fight or flight, but we also like put money in the bank. It's easier to recover the more you do it. So the more you stay incoherent, the more you stay coherent, the easier it is to get back into coherence. So for example, the first responders that they measured, they went back to back to back on different situations, and the people who were using the quick coherence tool, the HeartMath quick coherence tool, they recovered from the fight or flight much quicker. Okay, so they were building what's called resilience.
I see, yeah.
Resilience, and so that's really what we want to begin to do. So we're learning initially about awareness. Is our body in fight or flight? And if it is, how do we stop that? We stop that by just doing the breathing. It's called the neutral tool. So every day we ask our patient to pay attention to your breath. And if you find that you're holding your breath, stop everything that you're doing. 1 minute, just for 1 minute.
Just a 1 minute.
And breathe in for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. This is 6 cycles of that, okay? And so that's beginning to teach you about this awareness and get your heart rate variability back into coherence. Okay?
Interesting.
As soon as you start to
How do you tell you're out of coherence again? How would you teach a patient what things would put them out of coherence?
Right. So
like for me, for instance, I know it's like when I'm super multitasking, for instance.
Sure.
Like I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm not a great multitasker, so that creates a lot of stress in me. I like to sit down, do one thing and get it done and then not be sort of interrupted. But we live in a society now where multitasking is kind of been thrust upon us in the last, since the cell phone, for instance. I resisted for many years getting a cell phone, but it's kind of one of those things, and that definitely creates disharmony.
It's harder to multitask when you're anxious about multitasking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's true.
So as soon as you're aware, again, of the anxiety, of the tension that you're starting to feel, it could be a body sensation, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It could be feeling fatigue.
Tightness or fatigue.
Or one of the things that always happens to people who are chronically ill, and I've studied this with a number of patients, is something called brain fog.
Oh.
I just can't think clearly.
I see.
If that's the case, that means that you're not coherent. Okay. Because again, remember we talked initially about how the neurological system from the heart goes up to the brain, and there's this like little fork in the road. Okay, so if you're in chronic fight or flight, you're going to have brain fog. Okay, you can't think clearly. You just can't. And when you're faced with a chronic illness, you need to be able to think clearly. That's why it's so important to break the cycle when you have a chronic illness.
So now the next thing is reprogramming. That's breaking the cycle,
Wow.
kind of, right?
And so
Good
that's,
segue.
that's very interesting. And so that's where the technique in heart math is something called radiating your feelings. Radiating your feelings. Okay, so when we build, let's go back to resilience for just a second. So we'll build this little model. The quick coherence tool helps you build resilience. And how do you do that? Well, you focus your attention on your heart. You breathe in 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Okay? And you hold in mind a feeling of appreciation or some other kind of positive emotion. Okay? So that's the 3 steps in the quick coherence tool, and we ask a person to do this 3 to 5 times a day for 2 minutes. Okay? And what's really nice about the quick coherence tool is you don't have to be in a meditative space. You don't have to light the candle, sit on your cushion, close the door, and be in a meditation space. You can do the quick coherence tool on your way to work, when you're washing dishes, when you're vacuuming, when you're standing in line at the grocery store, okay? When you and I are sitting here discussing the heart rate variability or the heart strength therapy, we can both be doing it now, okay? We can do it all the time.
That's great. It's portable.
It is. And so there's no restrictions on when you can do it, okay? So the last piece of it is to hold in mind a feeling of appreciation, okay? Now, what I found is that some people don't know what that feels like. And I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that's not within their experience.
So to be thankful or have gratitude or appreciate things.
Have value. But some people, it's not important to them, okay? And what I found is that when I tried to reset my own heart rate variability and build resilience by using the quick coherence tool, that feeling of appreciation didn't work for me.
Oh, okay.
So what I did was I went to a place of beauty.
That's nice.
I went to a different place, okay? I held in mind a place that was beautiful, a place in nature, okay? And it turns out that gratitude or appreciation is one of the 24 character strengths. The appreciation of beauty and excellence is one of the character strengths. So we have all these 24 character strengths, and because they're positive and they create a positive feeling, okay, you can use any one of the positive character strengths as a way to build resilience. It doesn't have to be appreciation, okay?
I see, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's we build. Now the next step is to repattern. And we repattern by actually using gratitude or appreciation, okay? But this is where it gets really very interesting. In the heart math tools, in their literature, they say, focus your attention on your heart. Breathe in and out of your heart space, okay?
Well, it's a little esoteric for a lot of people.
Well, it's not really, because you can bring
Okay.
your attention to any part of your body.
Just focusing your mind's eye.
That's all you're
the
doing.
mind's eye on
You
a
just
particular
focus
spot.
your attention
Okay.
there, okay? And the last thing we do in reprogramming, in what's called the heart lock-in, is to radiate a feeling of appreciation. Now that's a little esoteric, don't you think? I had problems with that. Radiating a feeling
Well, I can think of some,
of
like maybe a person that I'm very appreciative of, and
Yeah.
or
Yes.
you know, maybe a situation in life when I was really appreciative of, or a birthday when I
Yes.
got a great gift. So you might have to teach patients and how to reach into their psyche to draw that information out. We've all received gifts, and
Yes.
we've all
It's perfect.
been appreciated.
So,
you know,
so this is where the character strengths come into play, okay?
if you're just joining us, I'm Dr. Z, and You're on the Integrative Wellness Program right here on WPKM Bridgeport. This is the Natural House Call segment, and Maud's with us, and we're here with Dr. Gary Gruber, who's talking about a new type of mind-body medicine that he created through amalgamating many different pieces that were out there, and he calls it heart strength therapy. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Gruber.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So, so let's talk a little bit more about personalizing the heart strength therapy. Maybe you can give some examples of maybe folks who've had trouble and how it and then how you were able to personalize it to them, and then how that made them whole again.
So one of the requirements for the heart strength therapy is to take the VIA character survey. The VIA character survey takes about 15 minutes. You go right online. It's free to do, and it asks you questions and prioritizes these 24 character strengths to you. Okay, and so each person is going to be different, because we know that that's how character strengths work. And so when we begin to do the work of reprogramming, we are asking the patient to look within themselves and utilize their core character strengths. So there's 24 different character strengths based upon 6 different classic virtues, the classic virtues.
Yeah, I was looking at some of them. So you have appreciation of beauty and excellence, forgiveness, gratitude, honesty, curiosity,
right,
perseverance, love of learning. That's one that I definitely have, that's for sure.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's the perfect way that you radiate feelings, or radiate this appreciation. And so I start the focus of the attention on my heart, and I'm breathing. And I say to you, Dr. Z, I really appreciate your love of learning. Okay? I really, I truly do. I mean, you were great.
You've known me a long time.
I've known you for a long time. A great professor, always stimulated, always looking at new things. This love of learning and curiosity, and I really appreciate that in
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Right. What I've just done is I've radiated my feeling of appreciation out.
Nice. Yeah, and I feel good too. I've accepted it and made me feel good too.
So what I've done is I am using character strengths, and I'm spotting positive character strengths in you and what you express. And I use that as a way to repattern negativity, these negative patterns in the brain. I'm just literally reforming patterns in the brain. That's what the reprogramming is, because we want to just kind of eliminate the negative patterns that have been created, and we overwrite them. It's very much like, you're doing word processing. You're writing a memo, okay? You save it to your hard drive, okay? 15, 20 minutes later, you said, you know what? I don't like the tone of it. I want to change some wording. I want to clarify some things. So you go back in, you pull the file up, you start making your changes, and then you save it, you override it.
That's
You
right.
override
That's
it.
right. That's right.
That's what you're doing when you're reprogramming your patterns of negativity. You're reprogramming them with positive patterns. Okay, the negativity just kind of dissipates.
How long does it take to stick? I guess this is very individualized.
Sure.
Because some people have these patterns for their whole life.
Yeah.
And how many? I've heard all these mantras, like it takes 21 days of doing something new to create a new pattern, but you're kind of locking these powerful emotions, and that's what's going to make this pattern stick.
It can be immediate. It can be immediate.
Okay.
Now, I had a personal situation where I've been using the heart math tool called the quick coherence tool for a long time. And then, so I know how to do it. I know how to keep myself in a coherent space. Okay. But for some reason, something was coming up in my unconscious mind, and I couldn't get into coherence. So that takes a little bit of self exploration. It takes almost like to be in a trance or self hypnotic state to allow yourself to see how that pattern was formed when you were younger, because that's where that unconscious pattern is coming from. It happened to be guilt. So my father taught morality, yes or no, good or bad, through punishment of a slap on the hand. Okay, that creates guilt. Okay, and guilt is never a good place to be. Okay, we make mistakes, but we shouldn't stay in a place of guilt, because unconscious guilt can really create a lot of disease. Okay, unconscious guilt creates disease. So that's something you want to work on. Okay, but what I can help in the therapy that we do, but basically I'm trying to set a person on a path to be able to do that kind of self-exploration themselves.
You brought up a good point about emotions and different diseases. Are there any, I guess there's a body of literature about, diseases and emotions. Like I'm do a lot of rheumatology in my practice, and have seen emotional states lead to arthritis and autoimmune disease.
But it's not direct.
No.
It's the thought, the negative thought. So there, in
the
terms,
emotion,
right.
Thought, emotion, chemicals,
and then breaking system down different systems in the body, and then it ultimately expresses itself as a disease. Right. When I was doing, and I still do environmental medicine, I mean, you can't escape that. But I had this big chart that I would teach the students, that there's 10 different influences, environmental influences. Okay. You know what? Let's simplify it. There's really only 3. I call them the 3 T's: trauma, toxins, and thoughts.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. Those are the things that cause disease. And as a doctor, I think that we're kind of responsible to the patient to help them uncover those different obstacles in those different categories. And thoughts is a huge piece of it. That's why I've concentrated there.
Well, we'll get into that. We're going to take a musical break, and we'll talk more about thoughts and also other aspects of your work, including talk about maybe some of the other body of literature that's out there on sort of this approach, although this is a unique approach that you've kind of put together. Great. Stay with us right here on WPKN Bridgeport. And we're back with more of the Natural House Call. I'm Dr. Z on Integrated Wellness, here with Maud, and with our special guest, Dr. Gary Gruber, talking about all kinds of interesting things, heart-brain coherence. We've heard many new vocabulary words, and we're really glad to have you on this Sunday morning. So welcome again. And let's talk a little bit more about some of your concepts as far as, and even I think better would be to let's actually crystallize it and use some possible cases that you've been working with, because that's always nice when the listener can listen to a case and put themselves in that, very possible, the moccasins that other patient walks in, like the old saying goes.
There's a case that I used to become certified in heart math intervention, and it's a great experience to be able to go in front of these really smart people who've developed this foundational work, and present the case to them. And this was a case of a woman who came to me with Lyme disease and many years of it. And I actually sent the blood work out and retested her to make sure, in my mind, we were really, really dealing with Lyme disease. And Dr. Vorjani at Immunosciences did the blood work, and he was like, yeah, this woman has Lyme disease, okay? Well, why was she coming to me after being treated for so long? Because...
How was she treated, by the way?
Well, you know...
The standard of care with a lot of antibiotics and things like that?
Actually, it started that way,
Okay.
but, you know, she moved into alternative treatments, okay, which for her meant a lot of IV antibiotics, okay? Now, just a little bit of background about this patient. She was in business. She had a very, very high responsible job. She had a husband, and she was taking care of her one of her parents. So she had a lot of stress going on in her life, and that was a very important piece to understand about her. She came to me because she could no longer do the antibiotics. It was basically destroying her liver, and that's what happens with IV antibiotics. So she came to me like almost like last resort. I have Lyme. What am I going to do about this? And so I just started doing the work of taking her heart rate variability. I mean, I put the heart monitor on her ear, and we're talking, and what I did was I during this session of measuring her heart rate variability, I asked her to hold in mind something that really upset her. Okay? So we go from just a very natural conversations, calmness in my office to I really, for the next minute, want you to hold in mind something that really bothers you. Okay? You choose it, you hold it in mind, and let me know when you have it.
So that kind of brings her back into a space of
Negativity.
an emotional and thought space of negativity.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Correct. Okay? And what happens is the heart rate variability goes crazy. I mean, it's very incoherent. You can't see any kind of a sine wave. You can't see any kind of smooth speeding up and slowing down. And then I say, okay, now after this minute, we're going to clear that. I want you to breathe 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. We do that for a minute, and sure enough, her heart rate variability becomes coherent. So that raises the question, well, what were you holding in mind during that 1 minute, right? So I had to ask, what was it?
Yeah.
She said, well, it's just I was holding in mind my symptoms, and every time I have a symptom, I question whether I'm not going to be able to survive in my job, whether I can have my relationship with my husband back, you know, whether I can really take care of my parents. All of this stuff comes up just because of a symptom, because all of a sudden I feel fatigued, or all of a sudden I feel pain in a knee. Okay, is it the Lyme? What is going on? I say, okay, fine. But we're not going to do anything. No medicines, no remedies, no diet, just heart math. Just heart math. And that was the end of it. She just needed to get out of the cycle of holding this negativity in mind. And so that what I taught her was, every time you begin to sense that you're starting to think about your condition, stop and breathe. Just stop it.
Interrupt the pattern.
Interrupt it. Neutralize it. Neutralize it.
Yeah.
Okay? And then from there, we begin to build resilience.
Right.
And it was done. It was done. No more Lyme. Now,
It's like a record. It's like a jukebox kind of going out. Remember the old juke? I just showed Dr. Gruber our record library here at WPKN. But it's like you know, playing that record, and then you're somehow scratching and warping it for those that, you know, younger people that don't know what records are.
Yeah.
If you scratch and warp it, you can't play it again and again and again.
Right.
So it's kind of like that, in a way.
Yeah, you're just playing the same tracks over and over and over again, and it can happen both consciously and unconsciously. Okay.
Like some people, you'll be driving along the road and you you're in like free thinking, and you don't even know that you drove for the last bunch of hours.
You know what, that's a hypnotic state.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, in a way.
Yeah, of course it is. That's
yeah.
everyone who's experienced that basically is in a trance.
You're
is
in a trance.
Yes. And if you know how to go there without, like driving, if you can just, sit and go into that space, you can actually do some of the additional work that's necessary to uncover some of those unconscious negative patterns. Okay, so in my case, I did it with unconscious guilt, and you can take that further. This work in heart strength therapy, you can use other techniques like trance work or self-hypnosis, affirmations. I give patients affirmations. Sometimes they need to have that little extra positive reinforcement. Okay, so instead of having some kind of anxiety because of job problems, when you begin to go into that anxiety, financial anxiety, you affirm a positive that all is well, finances are working themselves out. Okay, you create positive affirmations for yourself, so you don't keep going back into those negative patterns over and over and over.
Yeah, because that's kind of probably, we talked about this when we were off the air, talking on the phone, that you wonder why, if our body regenerates all the cells every couple of years, why do people stay sick?
Right.
If we have a new body, why do people stay sick?
Well, you think it might be the thoughts.
The thoughts.
Yes.
Because they seem to be locked in similarities and habits.
Right. And so the thoughts are mostly mentalizations. So mentalizations are really patterns of neurological tissue that you go back to when you have a certain emotion. So you then create this story. Okay, so the story is going on in your mind. Okay, that's what you were referring to as a self-talk before. Okay, but you can stop that at any point. You don't have to have that story going.